Yeah. So if you don't want your face, kill your video. We're recording.
Yeah. So it is my definite pleasure to introduce to you Bill Mannle. I've known Bill almost since the beginning of my work in constellations, which was in 2015, but he's been in constellations since 2003. And I'm going to read some stuff about him and then say a couple things. So, Bill, a licensed marriage and family therapist, is a Gestalt marriage and family therapist in private practice in Connecticut. He's a former adjunct faculty member at Southern Connecticut State University in the marriage and family program, where he served as a clinical supervisor and taught a course in family of origin. In the mid 90s, he focused on attachment and trauma in early childhood and trained at the Hinks Delcrest Center in Toronto, Canada. In 1997, continuing his work with trauma, he underwent intensive training at the Post Traumatic Stress Center in New Haven, Connecticut. Bill, as I said, has been an integral part of the family constellations community since 2003. He's a seasoned facilitator and trainer in family constellations. He's led seminars and workshops in various locations worldwide, including France, Belgium, Spain, Malta, Portugal, China, Brazil, Romania, New York, Croatia, Germany. I like how like New York and California are thrown in with everything else. Australia, and most recently this fall, Portugal. Um, Bill's approach to therapy and family constellations work integrates mindfulness, consciousness, Buddhist principles, and improvisation. He encourages his clients to let go of past stories and attachments, and believing in the transformative power of embracing the present moment and creating new, empowering narratives for their lives. A father of six children and three grandchildren, Bill's life is busy, connected, and filled with unexpected chaos and joy. With his extensive experience, Bill is a respected and sought after practitioner of family constellations. His exploration of the constellations' more profound spiritual and heart opening nature is inspiring and has significant effects along the path. Um, I'm very humbled and grateful, Bill, that you agreed to do this for us. I know you're busy. You're busy and important. And as I said, Bill was the first person who supervised a constellation for me in 2015 in Connecticut, and since then we've crossed paths. I've been lucky to host him here in Minnesota for our students. Um, and I know how heart-centered his work is and how profound. We share another connection, which is that he was a protege and then later a partner with Ed Lynch. They had the New England Center for Systemic Constellations on the East Coast, which is where I first met them. Later, Ed became a mentor and supervisor for me. It's a very tender connection. Some of you may know Ed just passed away. So I'm trying to say, aside from his professional credentials, I know I feel quite a heart connection with Bill, and I know this is what he brings to his work. So we're really lucky to have him with us today. One of the things we're going to suggest is since there are quite a number of us, if and when you have questions, please write them in the chat. Susan and maybe the rest of us, but certainly Susan will monitor them and bring them to Bill so that this is conversational and not just a one-way presentation. So with that, I turn it to you, Bill.
Wow. Okay, thank you. I'm really touched by that intro. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's good to see. Oh, can you get my face off the screen there?
You don't want to be spotlighted?
No, for everybody else, I don't want to see me talking. I want to see everybody else, all these beautiful faces.
There you go. As you
Thank,
wish.
thank you, Jim. I
You bet.
appreciate
But the thing is, people can personally pin the video if they want to. And
Okay.
it's up in the, should be up in the right or left-hand corner where it says pin video.
You
So,
want to pin me, that's fine. As long as I want to see all your faces or as many faces as possible. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Again, thank you for the incredible introduction. Catherine mentioned a tender spot. We lost Ed, so that's kind of percolating. Ed was one of the first Americans, the first generation of Americans trained, I think, with many others, Dan Cohen and Susie Tucker back in New York in 98, 99, by Bert himself, and then went on to teach the work. Uh, I like questions, so I think they open the field and move the process along. But tonight we're going to talk about rituals and introducing when to introduce rituals and constellations. I have a few in mind that I use regularly when they come up. Excuse me. Um, and just about constellations in general, Francesca Mason Boring was one of the first facilitators, just because of her indigenous background, said, constellations is ceremony. Any kind of constellation is a ritual in itself. Um, and the thing about rituals, there's an idea of liminal space. Liminal space it actually comes from the Latin limens, which is at the end, or it's the frontier, it's the edge of. And certainly when we were all newbies and we walked into our first constellation circle, we were at the edge of something. We left something behind. We're in the frontier. We didn't know what was going to happen. And when there's a very specific ritual, this is usually what uh, happens is we enter liminal space. We leave behind something we know, and we enter into a space of not knowing, which is part of this work is not knowing, and we cross over into a new field or a new space. So what I want to talk about tonight is just some rituals and that I've used, and please ask questions. And opening and closing a circle is one of the biggest ones. So always use a ritual to open and close a circle, for a couple of reasons. And some of it is just saying who you are, going around the circle very slowly. It's a ritual. It brings everybody in. It welcomes everybody into the center, even before we do any work. Even if there's a theme to the workshop, it brings everybody in, and everybody has a chance to speak. So I get to listen to everybody's voice. We hear the voices first, whether it's, and I'll do this even if there's 60 people in a circle. It may take a half an hour, um, but it brings everybody into the circle. So that's really important. So there's opening and closing rituals. And then there's rituals that we might need to sort of cap off a constellation. Bowing, you see some of the old videos with Bert, there's bowing. And the interesting thing about bowing is it's a sign of respect, but it's also leave taking too. In very cultures, when you bow, you turn and you go, or you bow when you greet. And I like the idea of leave taking. So it's you bow and you leave. I received what I needed from you, and I'm going to bow to you, and I'm going to go on my way. And Jim mentioned while we were warming up that many of our healing sentences have a ritual flavor to them. They're very structured. And what I like about rituals is their rituals have a structure. For me, there's a beginning, middle, and an end. And I do a lot of work with trauma in early childhood. Um, and for me, rituals are a very safe um, uh, process when you're working with someone who's dealing with a lot of trauma. It has a constellation feel to it, and I'll explain more about that. But it's a safe environment because the client is always in charge of the ritual, how far he or she wants to move. So there's a beginning, middle, and an end. Um, and there's a lot of rituals. One of the biggest ones in constellations work we all know about is the IROM, the interrupted reaching out movement. Because I was thinking about that. That's actually the thing. The interrupted movement explains what happened, right? You reach out, no one was there. There's an abandonment. I like to call it the CROM, which is completing the interrupted reaching out movement. So that ritual, and in many of Bert's videos, you'll see that. Does most of you know what the interrupted movement is? All right, I'll explain it a little bit more. So Usually, if there's a break with a parent, and I'll tell you how I use it. If there's an abandonment, your mother dies when you're 5 or 6. There's a complete separation. Mom has to go into the hospital. It's usually with the mother, although I've done it with dad too. Dad leaves you, leaves the family. God forbid, is there's a car accident or he goes off to war and he's gone. So there's something that's missing. There's an abandonment there. And that has a big impact, especially on little children. I worked with this woman a few years ago who's from Italy, and her dad died when she was 3. And that event, she was so close to her father, and that event has affected a lot of her growing up, moving into adolescence and adulthood. So it's a very powerful ritual because what it involves is reconnecting, finishing something. You reach out and your parent's not there anymore. So it's completing some movement that may have started in childhood. Um, and it's it, it runs very deep, and I'll explain how I use it. I only use it if there's been a break or there's been an abandonment. Some people have asked me, would you use that ritual if mom was present but she just wasn't available? I would set up a constellation. I would get more information about what is it about mom who didn't show you anything. Maybe she lost her mother at 5, and so yeah, she's putting food on the table and she's present for you bodily, but she doesn't see you or doesn't look at you because she's constantly looking for her mother. So that to me would be more of a constellation. I wouldn't set up the interrupted movement with mom in that situation, only if you've experienced the loss, the break, the cutoff. And when I do that ritual, I don't resource the client. People say, why didn't you resource the client? Because other rituals I do, because the fear is it could happen again. And I think the healing happens, and this is what I've seen, the healing happens when you can push through the fear of being abandoned a second time. And if you're constantly in touch with your resources, it can stop that process. So when you push through the fear, so you're walking towards your mother or your father, and I'll explain how the ritual works. It could get scary because what comes up is the old stories, the fear. This is not going to work. I'm going to lose my mom. She's not going to pay attention to me or whatever. And if you can complete it, something shifts. Something shifts. So let me explain what the IROM is. So um, I usually set up a parent at one end of the room. So in this case, with the young Italian woman, I set up her dad at the other end of the room. And I like to work with the body. So I give instructions to not talk. You can talk to me and just allow your body to feel whatever's coming up and to walk very slowly. Some people want to run. There's daddy, and you run. That feels good, but it doesn't complete the ritual. Or it's the opposite. The dad wants to run to the child. That doesn't complete it either. The idea is you went through a trauma, you went through an abandonment, and it's scary. If you can complete your movement towards your dad and he'll welcome you or your mother will welcome you, something shifts in your body, something shifts in your being. So I always invite people to do that particular ritual very slowly and take your time. In one moment in Canada, it took 2 hours. The woman wanted to do it. It took 2 hours with her mom. It's a very powerful ritual. I did it with another woman who lost her mother when she was 7, and she got close to her mom, and she looked at me. She said, "I can't go any further," and that's significant when we're working with rituals or any constellation. For me, if the client says, "I can't do it," I stop. It's done. Constellation's over. Yet acknowledging at the same time, you know, what you did, you look at the steps you took from there to there. So that's a significant movement within the client's being and structure. And you never know what the next step is going to be. Um, so that's one ritual. And usually, if there's an abandonment or there's been a cutoff, someone dies, mom dies, dad dies, that's the interrupted movement. And the idea is to pay really attention to how the client's describing that, And usually it'll come up in the very first interview, and it may not bring the issue they're bringing to the table. Oh, I want to talk about this, this, and this. So when we do our interview, well, tell me about dad, tell me about your father, tell me about your mother, and it may be dismissed. And sometimes it's dismissed because it's too hard to talk about. And I don't mean it's like, yeah, he died when I was 3, but that's not really the issue. I really want to talk about my mother and stuff like that. Okay, well, I can't guarantee that that won't emerge because it may emerge. And and I like the ritual because it's safe, and it's very powerful. Um, Rituals. What else about rituals? I use it a lot with trauma. So trauma, we move very slowly. And I developed this other ritual. I call it the coming home ritual. It's when you work with a cutoff, and I don't do a lot of work with parts, but it's the wounded younger self. So if you have a wounded younger self um, that has been abused, experienced war, um, some sort of horrific event, and they're lost in a way. There's a ritual similar. It's similar to the interrupted movement, except I do resource the person. So the resource is a person, place, or thing. Um, that when you think about the person, place, or thing, person, someone living or deceased, fills you with strength. You feel calm. There's no angst. There's no anxiety. Grandma, an auntie, a teacher, a mentor. A thing could be what you do, your poetry, your dancing, your cooking. A place could be where you went as a little girl, the woods, the trees, the beach. So I resource you, and um, and then I draw a line in the sand. I usually have a scarf. Usually when I do my circles, everybody has these great wraps, and so I always borrow a wrap, and I'm visual, so I like to have a demarcation, and then I set up the wounded self on the other side of the room. So it has a similar feel, but the you as the adult, uh, the invitation is you as an adult is to go and bring that wounded part back home. And that's a very structured ritual because you can stop at any moment and go back to your resources and take in strength. They can't go with you on the journey though. This is a journey you have to take by yourself to go get that wounded part. And I'll tell you what happened. I was working with a therapist in Australia many years ago, and I pay a lot of attention to the body. So she was doing this very significant talking about her mother. I'm going to do it now. And she said, my mother, I didn't have a voice. And she was doing this movement with her hand. I was very focused on that. Her name is Diane. And I said, Diane, I said, can I ask you to just, are you aware of what you're doing? She goes, no, there's a very specific movement with your hand. Um, and I'm going to digress for a minute because I believe when we're gathered in a circle and safety starts to emerge, the body is going to tell us something. It's going to tell us something usually that the client brain is not telling us. The body's thinking, oh, I'm going to get the truth out. I'm going to get the truth out. So I pay attention to that. So she was doing this, and a couple of times I asked her, she didn't know. Now everybody in this group of 50 people are watching that, and she's still doing it. My mother, and it's all about her mother. And then I asked her, can you complete that movement? And she brought it to her neck, and just like that. And I said, well, what would happen if you squeeze your neck a little bit? So she squeezed her neck, and she started crying. Now I'm thinking this is about mom. Mom was abusive. Mom was physically aggressive, probably held her by her throat, whatever. And I said, that's familiar. And she went, yeah, I'm still thinking it's about mom. And I said, what happened? Would you talk about it? She said, I'm 15. I'm walking home from school. I was attacked and sexually assaulted by 3 boys and held down by my throat. And this is the first time I'm sharing it in a group. So as a facilitator, what do What am I doing? What am I going to do? So I offered her that ritual. I said, well, and she knew constellation. She was a facilitator. I said, I have something I can offer you. And we set up the coming home ritual where she had her 15-year-old self at the other end of the room. She resourced herself and she did this long walk. And this was an incredible space. So there was a very long walk to reconnect with that 15-year-old self. Um, and for me, it's very important when there's that kind of trauma. I would have never set up the boys. I would have never set up. It's too much. I, I did the ritual, which for her was very powerful, and I think and think enough. So again, I can't emphasize enough because this is my own personal ethic. When there's a trauma, there's physical abuse or rape or something like that, I never set up the perpetrators. I want to tap into the client's strength. Another ritual I did, which comes from Francesca, same thing, sexual assault on a woman. She had two master's degrees, early 40s. And once at 14, then she was in the military, sexually assaulted in the military. So I asked her, how did she get here? And she thought I meant the workshop. She said, my husband brought me. I said, no, I mean, how did you get to where you got in your life? Your two master's degrees. She had this incredible inner strength. Um, and we talked about it. And I said, well, I'm going to offer you this. Now, Francesca does this beautiful ritual, and that's in one of her books. I forget which one. Somebody has to remind me, Jim or Susan might know. It's called the fire ritual. And really what it was originally was in indigenous culture when a young woman had her first menses, 12, 13, 14. The women would take her out into a field, they'd surround her and they'd celebrate her burgeoning womanhood. And the warriors would stand, the men would stand at the edge of the field and protect the circle. So that's what we did. That's what I did for this woman. And what that does in a constellation context is that every woman standing in the circle is an ancestor, not your grandmother, not your mother who you have issues with, not Auntie Jane. Ancestors that might be 70, 80, 90, 100 years old. You may know who they are, but the idea is you, the woman, would stand in the middle of the circle, and each one of these ancestors who came from a different country, lived, loved, struggled, went through turbulence and pestilence and war and stuff, or come in and offer this person something. And I have to tell you that for me, watching that and witnessing it from afar, outside the circle, has been profound. I did this in Australia. I forget what the context was or what the issue was, and there was two Maori women in the circle, and all of a sudden, from deep within inside of them, this deep Maori chant came, and the whole ancestor circle surrounding this woman were just singing this song. It was just amazing. And that can be used for trauma too, because what it does and what rituals do is it tap into your inner strength. And then now with the ancestors, you're receiving something from people in your line. Again, you may not know who they are by name, but they're all people in your line, and they're offering you something, and it feels safe and it feels really connected. All right, I'm going to stop there. Any questions so far? Because I could yap on. No questions in the chat, Susan?
None in the chat yet. No,
Okay.
don't be shy. Somebody put some questions in here.
Always takes the first one. Um, okay. So I'll say some more about that. I'm going to share something by this woman, Donna Hennis. I forget where I got this from. I think she wrote a book. She talks about ceremonial observance, which is what we do in constellations. It's an observance of something. So a person's life connections to bigger fields, ancestral fields. Ceremony observance adds lucid layers, depths, dimension, drama, and distinction to our lives, making the ordinary seem extraordinary. many of us from different cultures, we still have rituals. We still have rituals for marriage is a ritual, marriage ceremony is a ritual. In the Jewish tradition, there's bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs when young people become adolescents. They're welcomed into the community, but with prayers and ceremony. Uh, so, through ritual practice, we can experience ourselves as prepared, present, passionate, principled, and potent. Everybody needs to say that 5 times fast. Prepared, present, passionate, principled, and potent. When we set aside the quality time and claim the psychic space, this is important for a ceremony. When we assume the authority to do so, we can transform our perceptions, our perspectives, and our experiences, and in the process, our reality. Um, okay.
I have a question, Bill.
Who's that?
Susan,
All right. Yes, please.
can you talk a little bit about, in the two examples you shared with the completing the movements, what types of healing statements would you say for that when somebody's reconnecting with the younger part of themselves?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question because in those, usually leave those alone. So, if someone's moving towards the mother, and I'll share something else that happened too. When somebody's moving towards the mother, usually there's a bodily movement when they get really close. Someone may say something like this young woman with her dad. I said, speak in your mother tongue. So she spoke in Italian, and it was just like, Papa, I miss you, and blah blah. I'm grown now. I have a family. So I usually leave that alone. And the same when you a little bit different when you're retrieving your younger wounded self. What I may say or what I've used in the past is you're going towards this younger part, the 8-year-old, the 15-year-old. Um, you may say like, "I'm here now," or "I have you now," something to that effect. And then I kind of let Billy Joel leave a tender moment alone. Something usually moves, and I trust it. There's usually a reaching out, a connection, a pulling towards. Um, and then that particular ritual, then the idea is with the wounded younger self is to bring him or her back and introduce her or reconnect her to maybe some of the resources she knew and to sort of bring her back to incorporate her. So I usually leave that alone. Hmm,
Thank you.
those two, yeah.
And there is a question in the chat. Is there a ritual that you would do for a mother whose daughter won't talk to her?
Well, first of all, I would need to understand how long the daughter wasn't talking to the mother. I usually what I would do is if
5 years.
5 years is significant time, what I usually would ask, and I tend to probably more lean into what the mother needs. What does a mother need? I mean, yes, you want their daughter to talk to her, but as the conversation's unfolding, getting more information, I might lean more into a constellation, only to see if this if there is this a pattern? Is there a pattern between the mothers and daughters? Did you cut your mother off? Did your mother talk to her mother? Just to see and to really support the mother. What is it you need? Um, and maybe a ritual. I don't have a specific one for that, but maybe a ritual would emerge that the mother might need to find something within herself or allow her daughter to have this space or something like that, to be in a place of disillusionment or anger or separation. But usually I always ask, what is it you need? So, Susan, if you're the mother, I said, what do you need? I know, I want my daughter to talk to me. I said, no, but before you leave this workshop, what is it you think you need? What would you like? And maybe expand it. Is this a pattern? You know? Good question, though. Good question. I do want to share one. So when I cut my teeth on this work, when I was training, I was working at a child and adolescent program, um, and I also was working at a local high school. And so I first did constellations with adolescents, 13 to 18. They blew me away. The depth that these kids would go to, I never experienced it before. So I worked with this one woman, one girl who was so hesitant to do a piece of work, and she had an abortion. It was a Romeo and Juliet situation, two 16-year-olds, very passionate. She got pregnant and she had an abortion. I think her parents made her have an abortion. And she did not want to talk about it, but she finally did. And so I offered her the ritual of the fire ritual, was what it's taken from, and all the other young women, these young women, 15, 16, 17, 18, in the room, and she went in the center of the room. It was pretty interesting because like 6 or 7 of the boys were on the circle, the warriors sort of supporting the circle, and these young women were representing ancestors, so they were getting into this very deep place, and there was a lot of power, and I can't emphasize enough how much power. It was so deep and so precious. And one of the boys leaned into me. He goes, "Oh, I didn't know girls felt like that. I didn't know girls had those kind of feelings." I said, "Oh, you haven't. Get ready." So it was really an eye opener. But then later, she wrote me this note. This 16 years old. So I'll share this with you. This is really touching. Bill, I wanted to let you know how much the other week meant to me when you visited our it was an Alateen group at the high school. Doing the family constellations helped me grow our trust. The group has probably saved my life. Telling everyone about my abortion and being accepted and loved like that meant more to me than I could ever put into words. Those girls cried for me, my broken heart, my baby. It was the most incredible thing that ever happened to me and helped me immensely. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions?
Yes. Do you have some rituals for severe illnesses? Another question in the chat room.
Yeah, severe meaning like um,
Uh,
close to illnesses that bring you close to death.
that's what I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't done any of those, but I've seen Bert do rituals. So what I would do, and I'm very practical when it comes like this, if someone came to me and said something like, if they had a pneumonia or something, okay, we could, set up the pneumonia. But if it was they had 3 or 4 stage some sort of cancer, I would invite them to make peace with the death, and that's very profound. But sometimes, because you don't know how much life you have left. Uh, I haven't done that personally, but that's probably what I would do. Have you made peace with your death and set up death and maybe some resource? Bert's done this many times. You've seen any of it on his old tapes and stuff. One thing about constellations work, and I think this is important as a facilitator, and Bert would said this, the much of this work is about life and death on a bigger scale. The things, birth, love, birth, death. And I think we don't, if we're afraid of that, we shy away from that. I think the work will get a little muddled. I think it's okay to say, hey, have you made peace with your death? Especially if they come to you looking for a last resort. And my experience of watching Bert work is that when people can make peace with their deaths, something releases, something they're allowed to let go, and they may live for 6 more days, 6 more years, whatever. So I think it's to bring in the fact that, yeah, death is hovering. Other questions?
Yes, another question in the chat right now. Is there a ritual you would use for uniting a country divided into two warring factions?
This is what you want to talk to Angwin St. Just about. Well, I think, well, when you're working with countries that are two warring factions, it's not just what's happened in the present. Especially, you want to see the age of the country, stuff that's happening. I mean, one of the best books I can recommend to any of you is The Ancestor Syndrome by Anne Anselin Schutzenberger. She's gone now, but she gets into these bigger fields and talks about what's gone on in the countries and what's gone on before. Because usually it's about belief systems. It's not about it's not always about resources. It's usually about belief systems. But what she does is invite you to take a bigger step backwards. How is this showing up again? Where did it show up 100, 200, 300 years ago? And it's showing up again. And I did a workshop. Catherine, you might have been there, but I was invited to do some big thing in Zagreb in Croatia. And I told the people who invited me, oh, there's all this warring, there's all this stuff happening, and there's these sides. And I said, I don't do that kind of work. And they said, that's exactly why we want you to do it, because it's not something you do. And I said, okay. So people were separated, and there was words, and there was this. And I always remembered, when that stuff is going on, what we're all blind to is we don't see what's possible. Usually when we're stuck in our world, us versus them, I'm right, you're wrong, we don't see what's possible. And so in that constellation, I asked Susan also from Australia, I said, I want you to come in as something new that changed that changed the field, is to be able, the willingness to see something new, to see something that's different, to see something that you're not seeing. So just keep that in mind. I mean, some people like Angwin does this a lot. She works with big trauma fields and big things, and it's just not something I go more towards the smaller. But I think it's expanding and really understanding. Okay, what we're witnessing between Group A and Group B is probably happened before, but we haven't seen it because it happened in generations past. And maybe tapping into that and allowing that to come in somehow. Thank you for that, Susan. Appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to add to the chat or raise your hand and
Raise your
ask?
hand.
Nothing else for now in the chat.
Okay. All right. So more about rituals, and I'll just share here. So I mentioned the fire ritual. Let's share some more here. Part of what I like about rituals and constellations is, like I said, for me, I usually introduce them when there's been a lot of trauma. I usually, especially personal trauma, I usually don't set up the perpetrators. I know people have. I mean, it's not something that I'm drawn to, and especially where the client's at. I'll say a little bit more about that, especially if it's personal trauma. Because you know, on one level, you're doing a 1 day workshop, a 3 day workshop, and you don't know this person, and then they go back out into their life. So I'm always tuned into internal resources, and for me, what a ritual can help do is tap into the internal resources. What is it? What is it that the client forgets that they already have, that the ritual can support? Oh, yeah, there's that too. And there's that too. And there's that too. And I'll say a little bit about closing rituals. Closing rituals, especially in a constellation, are you'll get to a place where you're doing a constellation. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 people, family members. You'll get to a place where it's coming to an end. There's an out breath. There's some sort of acknowledgement. There might be a reunion between family members, but it might need something else. And that's when I might say, well, what would happen if you were to just bow in front of your parents? Now, bowing to some people is difficult, but I like bowing because I look at it as it's a thank you and leave taking too. I like the idea of leave taking. And usually if I have an ending ritual like a bow, it's what would happen if you bowed and then straight turned up or stood up and turned and stepped into something. And usually that just taps into that strength. Oh, okay, thank you for what you could give me. And I'm going to bow to that. Then I'm just going to step into whatever's next for me. So I think sometimes rituals like that can bring everything to a close. Now, another thing that I watched one of my mentors, Jakob Schneider, do, this was after the constellation has ended. He gives like instructions, and I really like this. It's not really ritual, but it's ritualistic. So it's post constellation. And I just did this recently. Someone had passed early on, or oh, the yeah, the person had a sibling who died in birth. They were twins who died, and so there's that. I forget how far along the pregnancy was. So we did the constellation, and I said, I'm going to invite you to do something, and came to a good place for that person. I said, in martial arts, there's a thing called a kamaza, which is an altar. You come into the dojo and you bow. It's usually the picture of the founder of that particular lineage, and there's usually offerings. I said, what if you were to set up an altar in your house to your twin sister or your twin brother, and every day or once a week you get a flower, and you put that and do it for a month. So, and they, tears can come. It gets emotional, and yeah, I would like that. I would like that. And so it's a continuation, but now they're bringing the person who didn't come into life back into their heart and in a big way. So that's a ritual, but it's post constellation, and I really took to that when Jakob suggested it. Those really touch me. There's one more thing I'm going to invite you to consider, and maybe you do this, and it could be with your lost mother or your dad or something. Is to set a place up. If there's a picture, set a separate place in the house with a picture of your mom, and maybe you bring her a flower once a week, or and just and see how that feels. And so something expands, something opens, something's not put over here, something is, I don't need to look at that anymore, or I don't want to look at it now. I'm bringing it in. This is part of who I am. This is part of where I came from. Okay, so I'm really hoping for questions here, but Karen, you have a question, I can tell. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Bill. Nice to see you. I'll ask a
You.
question.
Sure, please.
Um, Actually, I have two questions. One is I'm very curious about your use of the word out breath. And so if you'd say something about that. The second thing is actually a higher order question, um, which you sort of touched on a little bit. You've given these examples of pieces of work that you've done, but like really, I'm just thinking like I walk into the room, there's a situation that presents itself, for somebody who wants to do a piece of work. Like literally, kind of what are some of the things like, oh no, this is really a constellation, or no, this is really a ritual, or this could kind of go either way. Like let's talk a little bit more till I have a little bit more information.
Okay. Oh, the out breath. Okay, so Bertolt Usemer I think in his book, The Art and Practice of Family Constellation, he would always say a constellation, usually if something's happened, there's several people standing up, and there's movement, and all of a sudden it's coming to a place. What he says is he pays attention to the out breath. All of a sudden, you turn grandma around and everybody goes, okay. That could invite another movement, but and then if the whole field, all the representatives are out breathing, something's coming. The tension is being released. Something's coming to a close. And it may take a few more steps. So that's what I mean by out breath. As facilitators, pay attention to the out breath. Sometimes you have to remind people to breathe, like breathe. But just in general, when you bring in the lost child, or the daughter's reconnecting with her dad, her biological father, and all of a sudden and everybody in the field, and then the group in the circle go. So it's just a finishing. So that's just notice that. Just notice. To your second question, um, it's a discernment. It's a moment by moment discernment. Now, if someone came to me and they in the interview and they mentioned that there was childhood trauma and stuff, I might ask, so is this something you've done work on? Yeah, I'm good. I have a really good therapist. I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. I really want to look at the fact that my mother had 2 abortions before me. Okay, so you discern, uh, and if and you can tell by the person's body or whatever, but you discern, like, all right, fine. Um, if they haven't worked on it, then I usually don't set up a constellation. I can offer you a ritual. I said, what, and usually the question I ask is, Karen, what would you like to leave here with today? Or what is it you need? I want to feel less scared or less anxious. Okay. And so when do you feel that? Every time I think about what happened to me when I was 7. Okay. How often does that come up? Twice a week. I said, okay. Do you have support? Do you have support outside? Yeah, I have a really good group, or I have a really good therapist, but there's something missing. Then I might just offer a ritual. Yeah. But if you say, no, I'm really good with that. I have a great therapist. We've been doing work for 5 or 6 years. It's my mother lost 2 children, or I had a sister that died before I was born, and I know that's in there somewhere, and I want to understand. Okay, we'll look at that. It's always a moment. It's really discerning, and I don't know how else to say it. That comes with experience. That comes with experience. Oh, and one thing, and I think, Catherine, you'll appreciate it. One thing I won't do is I won't let someone set up their own constellation. So someone comes to us, and they've been to several constellations. Okay, Bill, I'm so happy I'm here. So this is what I want to do. I need my father and my mother, and they already have an idea of what it should look like. I go, no, I'm not going to do it. So you don't need me, then why do you don't need me? So I was at a recent, I had my colleague from Romania here, and there was a Romanian woman in the circle. She lives in the United States, and she came in with flowers. She had all these different flowers. She goes, I wanted this. I want to do it with my children. I bought flowers. I'm going to put them on their grave. And of course, my friend Dragos he goes, no, that's not happening in Romania. And he said, it's not happening. Yeah, because then it's not a constellation, it's something else. I don't know what that is. So, because people think, but part of that is fear. Part of that is fear. If I turn this over to you, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's okay. And then usually I'll go there. Let's just go with, what you're worried about or what you're afraid of. She wants to heal something. It's like, I never let people run to their parent in the interrupted movement, because that doesn't heal anything. It feels good. It doesn't heal anything. But I want to get it over with so I don't have to feel whatever it is I felt before. But the healing happens when you can go through the fear of it happening again, and it gets completed. Thank you for those questions.
Okay, we've got a couple more in the chat. First one is, what ritual would you do for a 25-year-old with severe anxiety and panic attacks who was a year old during the 9/11 incident?
Okay, so my first thought is I would work with him individually. I couldn't, I, it's very difficult to work with someone in absentia, like a 25-year-old who went through that. But whose panic is he picking up? Yours as the mom? Because of your fear? Yeah, so I would work with you on that. So if during 9/11, we all experienced 9/11 in many different ways. If that's your fear, then I would offer you a ritual. And maybe by you finding a way to regulate it differently, things could start to calm down. But for a 25-year-old, I would invite him to come to a workshop.
Hey,
I know
next.
look, I'm a parent too. There's many parents out there. They come into constellations. I need to do a piece of work about my son. No, you need to do a piece of work about you. I hear your son is struggling. Bring him, have him go see Susan, have him go see Alexandra, wherever, but so he can sort of be in that field and do some work for himself. And then there'll be a representative for you or the father or somebody like that. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. For openings and closing rituals, do you try to keep a common theme?
Um, yeah, I love French. If it's a smaller group, Francesca does this beautiful thing, and I was in a workshop with her many, many years ago, and it was the first cohort where we stayed in the same cohort. It was at the International Workshop for Systemic Resolutions, which we all knew as the intensive in southern Germany. So I went every year. It was like going to Hogwarts. We were all these little wizards running around this ancient monastery. Catherine's been there, and Angwin said that. She says, just like fucking Hogwarts. We're running to our next class to learn from these masters. Yeah. So Francesca opened this thing with a naming ceremony, which it was part of her tradition, but I really liked it. So basically, the naming ceremony. Hi, my name is Bill Mannle. I'm the son of Elizabeth Daly Mannle, Thomas Edward Mannle, and his father is Robert Blah, and his mother is. Well, we got to like halfway down, and this one woman from England, a colleague of mine, she just would burst into tears. She goes, "I don't know who my parents are. I was adopted." And Frances will name your adopted parents. And that moved right into a constellation. But I love that naming ceremony. It's a little tricky if you have 50 people because that could take you into lunchtime. Uh, but I still like doing it because you're not thinking about that. Well, I'm going to go in, I'm going to work with Bill, and all of a sudden, oh, yeah, this is where I come from. And all of a sudden, you're really in touch with this is where I come from. These are the people. These people brought me here. I may not know their names, but it's very moving in a way, and it really brings the group in. It really grounds the group. You become settled in your chair, and maybe something happens, like my friend Gay. She just couldn't name who it was, and then it opens up a space, and we all become connected to her. So yeah, I love that. Um, if it's a small group, I really ask people just to say who they are, what brings them to that. I might do the naming ceremony. Um, and sometimes I like to do something fun. I just do so if I'll turn to the person to my left and I'll say, "Hey, I'm Bill. I'm facilitating today. Um, welcome." And they'll say, "I'm Catherine. Thank you." And then they'll turn and say, "Hey, I'm Catherine," to the next person and welcome. So the whole circle goes around and welcome. That's kind of fun. I mean, it just everybody's welcoming everybody else in the group. And I think it's really important for both beginning and an end to open and close the circle. For an ending, what I might do is I bring everybody together, we'll hold hands, um, and just, it's a long day, end of a long day or end of 3 days, and just hold hands and just say a word or two of what's coming up for you. Um, and before I do that, I'll thank everybody who showed up. So we're doing 3 days worth of work. I might hold hands and said, I want to acknowledge everyone who showed up, your ancestors, your aunts, your uncles, sisters, brothers, relatives who helped us, be here, settled, and to help us heal today. Because that's what happened. Really, everybody's representing ancestors. Help us heal today. And then I'll go around and say, okay, a word or two. Um, I say that because it's never a word or two, but it's okay. It's just a feeling like I feel open, I feel more full of life, feel grateful, whatever. So I think those two are really important. And if it's a 3 or 4 day workshop, at the end of the day of so we'll open the circle. At the end of the day of the first, I still bring the circle together, and I'll just say thank you for being here. Have a great night, and then let people go. It's at the last day that we'll do much more of a closing kind of ceremony. And there are people, facilitators out there. I love it. They're much more into shamanic work. They have all kinds of instruments that help sort of close the circle, add a vibration. Um, people who shake the drum or something or tap those things are really important, but that's all part of that tradition. Um, Great question. Great question. Hi, Nancy. It's good to see you. Um, Catherine.
Well, I was just reminded of a closing ritual that we all did. I don't know who suggested it at one of the East Coast intensives, and I don't know if I can even
Mhm.
describe it well enough, but it was like a snake. Do you
Oh,
remember that?
yeah, that comes
Might
from,
want to, it was fabulous. It took a while, but it was
yeah,
great.
this is a good one. This is a good closing one. I did that recently it's called the snake ritual because it looks like a snake going around the room. It takes a while, especially if it's a big group, but there's something, I like it at a closing because there's something very personal and very connecting about it. So I'm not really good at this. So imagine a big circle, right? So what I would do is I would turn to the person to my left. So here's the person to my left, and I would turn and we would have an exchange. And then I would go to the next person. And as I start to go, that person kind of weaves around. So what happens is there's a weaving around, and then I would come back to up front, and then everybody would weave around and find their place again. There's not a big group saying everything. Everybody's saying something very personal to every other group member. So if you watch it from above, it looks like this snake is curling around itself and coming back. That's what, yeah.
I have to say that was one of the most meaningful closing rituals I've been at because of that, because we got to say something to each person, and I've never seen it done since then.
I think it's very important if you're doing like in Germany, that's a 6 day event. And you allow time for that. So that's 6 days when we're all living in this heady, intense environment and really opening up and sharing our hearts and souls and stuff. And it's really, and you're witnessing other people's hearts and souls, and just to go up to each person. And depending on how many people in the room, that could take almost an hour and a half. But I think it's a very powerful way to really connect and just be grateful and gratitude, you know. Yeah. Really important. Opening and closing are really important, even if it's a 1 day workshop. Yeah. Okay. What growth have you experienced? Can you share that, Susan?
Somebody is asking, can you describe what growth you've experienced personally from constellation work?
Okay, here we go. Well, this work has really changed my whole life in a way. I mean, I there's something for me that um, about healing inside a group. There's all kinds of group work out there and stuff, but there's something for me that I did two big pieces of work on childhood trauma. And in 2008, when I was in Germany, uh, I entered this cohort, and back then you could just pick a group, right? Since then, or over the years, the groups were assigned because too many, there was like, 50 people in one group and 10 in another. So the administrators decided to assign groups. So I'm in this group and I said, I don't really want to be here. I don't want to be here. And then I had to trust that voice. This is where I'm supposed to be. And it turned out to be correct. Everybody went very deep, very fast, and very safe. We all felt safe. I was able to do a piece of work on an early piece of trauma. And what I was able to experience is that group held me in a very particular way that I could release shame that I'd been sitting with for a really long time. And that was like, there's such a gift. And part of it was the group. The piece I did, yes, there's no question about it. But I had two incredible facilitators, and one of them represented my brother, Gunther Weber, some of you may know. Um, and so it was to release the story and the sort of the download I had about this must have been, I kept telling myself this had to be this way. This would be there's all this stuff, and shame was a big part of it. And I don't know what to say. It's just kind of left, not there anymore. It's gone. Now you work your way towards it, put your toe in the water, put your toe in the water. But when I sat in this group, I said, it's time. I have to do it. I have to do this piece. Um, so I think that's one of the biggest growth spurts for me. And also, too, and Catherine sort of alluded to this, I just like to go to the heart of the matter. I want to know what you need. Maybe it's just a small piece, and many people see me work. Sometimes my work doesn't take a long time. It doesn't. Sometimes the ancestors need to be there. They don't. And I'll share something with you, again with adolescents. And I think I've learned this mostly from them. Um, and that was a gift too, because I realized, oh, the beauty of this work, if you can go right to the heart of the matter and something could emerge like this. So I was working in this group of teenagers in this clinic, and many of them, would come after school, and the group, they'd stay for 5, 6, 7 weeks, 3 to 5 p.m., 3 to 6 p.m. There was this one young boy there. His name was Michael, and Michael was adopted, and he was very anxious. And he had witnessed a few constellations, and finally he started to ask me, I want to do a constellation. I want to do a constellation. I said, okay, Mike. I said, let's do something tomorrow. That'd be great. That'd be great. So he went around telling everybody, and they were coming, the kids were coming to me and saying, Mike's going to do his constellation. Mike's going to do his constellation. So he waited for me when I got to work. He goes, am I going to work today? I said, Mike, you're going to work. I want to work. I want to work. I said, Mike, you're going to work. It's okay. Sweet kid. And so the group was rotating. Kids would come in at different times. So we had 3 new members that day. And some of you might have heard this story, but I tell it often. And so everybody was saying, great, Mike's going to do a piece of work. Mike's going to do a piece of work. We're in circle, and I'm introducing the new people around. We're going around the rooms. Just say who you are. So there's this one young woman, 15. She was impeccably dressed, but she swore like what we would call a truck driver or a sailor. She just had a dirty mouth. So I'm going to swear. Her name was Gloria. So we get to her. I said, yeah, my name's Gloria. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I'm not fucking crazy. My mother's fucking crazy. And I said, okay, Gloria, thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome. Blah, blah. She goes around the room. And we're settled. So I said, okay, Mike, sit next to me. And I said, what's your question? So he says to me, I want to know why my mother gave me away. I'm like, oh, all right. Okay. All right. Let's look at that question. So I stood up and I said, pick someone to represent your mother. He looks at Gloria. She doesn't know anything about constellations. Nothing. I said, she goes, would you represent my mother? Sure, I don't care. I'll fucking do it. I'll fucking represent your mother. That's exactly what she said. I said, okay, Gloria, come over here, stand here. And Mike, you stand here. I said, Gloria, you don't have to do anything. Just wait. Take a deep breath. I said, Mike, ask your question. Mom, why did you give me away? Well, all of a sudden, the blood drained from this young girl's face. She started shaking, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to pass out. I'm going to lose my job. She's going to fall on the floor and hit her head. Um, and I said, I put my hand on her shoulder. I said, is this okay? Yeah, yeah. Just take a breath, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, breathe. I said, Mike, ask your question again. So he asked it again, Mom, why did you give me away? Now, tears are coming down her eyes, and her lips are quivering. And I said, "You looks like you want to say something. Just say it." She looks at this man, young boy, and she says, "I wanted you to live." That was it. So I'm getting emotional. I have goosebumps on my hand. I take a big step back, take a big breath. Everybody's crying, and Mike is beaming. He has a smile. I said, "Mike, you okay?" He goes, "That's all I needed to hear." That was it. That's all I needed to hear. I said, "You sure?" Yeah. Okay. So, so we sit down, sit down. So Gloria, come out of roll. You can go sit down. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, Mike, that was so beautiful." I think this was 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I'll say 5 minutes tops. That's it. The power of this work. So, but here's the fun. Here's the fun ending to it. So everybody's going, "Oh my God, this is great. This is great." So we're going through a round, and someone next to me goes, "This is Mike is so precious." Even the guys are saying, "Mike, go, Mike. It was great. It was great." Go around. People are saying the same thing. We get to Gloria. She goes, "What the fuck just happened to me?" And I said, everybody said, "Hang in there, hang in there." So that work taught me that if you're asking me, those kids taught me how to get to the essence of something really quickly. And that kind of is what my work's become in a way. Not that I won't set up, not that the work doesn't call for, the constellation doesn't call for something that might have happened years past to see the pattern or something like that. So I hope I answered your question, where that came from. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's one more in the chat. Do you have a favorite technique or ceremony for clearing energy from representatives after a constellation?
Yeah, there's a few things, and some people, I've been in that situation, and I think you as a facilitator you usually can tell because they're not settled, and you might want to point that out. You might say, "Deb, you don't look settled." Yeah, that was very difficult. I'm not comfortable. I said, "Okay." So what I would do is invite the client to stand up, and the person who's struggling, the representative, to stand up, and have the client say, "Thank you for representing my mother. You're not my mother. Everything happened belongs to me and my system." And sometimes that happens. Or I can have the representative say, I was honored to represent your family member, your grandmother, your mother. I give that back to you." And you actually take a physical step back or physical step out. Because sometimes representatives play very deep roles, perpetrators, murderers, and it can be very intense. So you want them to be able to come out of it, walk around the circle, take a step, give it back to the client. You know, great question. Any other questions?
Not right now in the chat. It's empty.
All right, so I'm going to invite everybody to do this very powerful ritual. Everybody can do it. You can turn your cameras off. You don't need to. So this is something I developed when I was I think it was teaching. You don't have to turn your cameras off, but if you want to. So if you all can stand in your space, and some of you may have done this before, um, put a demarcation on your floor, like a little scarf, a ruler, or something. Just because you're gonna denote the past and the present. Okay. Yeah. And nothing. Yeah. And the the rituals, and this is really a small constellation, but it's an internal personal constellation. So wherever you're standing is the present. Wherever you're standing is the present. Okay. And then the other side of the scarf or the pencil or the book is the past. So the invitation to all of you is to step over into the past and say, I was here. Say it to yourself. I was, or turn your microphones off. Say, don't do it yet. Don't do it yet. Let me finish it. Say, I was here. Feel it. Allow space for whatever comes up, and then turn around and go back over and say, and now I'm here. I have to put my, so I was here. And you know, you don't, you know what you want to do is, Pinar, you want to step over and turn and walk straight into the present, not backwards into the present. Because if you're walking backwards into the present, you're still looking in the past. So I was here, and now I'm here. I was here, and feel it. And the beauty of this, the invitation is to just allow for whatever comes up, any tension and anxiety, any feelings, just allow space for all of that. And then come back and pay
So we
attention.
we start from the past.
No, you start in the present. You're always in the present, and you step into the past. Okay? And you step over. I was here. I was here, meaning the past. And you turn and you step back into the present. And now I'm here. Yeah, and just do it slowly. Really slowly. When I do these exercises or small rituals, I like to exaggerate. I want the body to move very slowly, not hopping or jumping. Or I was here when you step into the past. I was here, and now I'm here. I had to put my earpieces in because my son tends to be very loud in the other room. Okay. Give yourself a little time to do that, and we'll come back. And then when you're all back, we'll maybe have a little sharing. Anybody wants to share? Just hey, anyone like to share? Some of you, I think, have done this before with me.
Bill, do you want them to raise their hands?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, Miss Linda, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Bill. I've done a lot of work. When I went back to the past, I could feel the sadness. I could feel the tears come to my eyes. But what I noticed was it wasn't so overwhelming as it would have been a couple of years ago, because I've done quite a bit of work around past trauma. And then when I step back into the present, I could look at the past and it didn't have the hold that it used to have.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a good one. Yeah.
You're welcome. And you guys are all welcome to this. It's so. Anyone like to share? We'll do a few more sharings. So, Noreen, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see your face. It's nice to see people from all over. I have to say that. So. Gonna unmute, Noreen. Unmute.
Got it.
There you
Sorry,
go.
I don't usually work on my phone. The first time I realized I actually rushed it. Like when you said take some time, and then I realized I kind of just jumped, back and forth. And I was like, even though I'm a facilitator now too, it didn't occur to me what I was doing, which I was rushing through it. So I didn't, feel it or acknowledge it. And then the second time when I did it more slowly, and I actually really stomped my feet when I came forward, then it was like really funny because I was like, I want to dance a jig. And I don't even know, I know I have Irish heritage, but I don't even know what a jig is really, except that it's dancing and it's Irish dancing. And if I didn't have the camera on, I would have danced, but I was.
Yeah, well, it's okay. We would have
But that
enjoyed
was kind of cool. Yeah. Because I've, done a lot of work too on the past. I did have a question, if I can add.
Sure.
Just curious if you could do that same ritual, or if you have a ritual that you would use with past lives.
Yeah, I don't really work with past lives, so I don't.
Don't know.
I suppose you could unpack it and unweave it or weave it in a new way.
Yeah.
I won't be able to answer that.
Okay. It keeps coming up when people are working with me lately, so
Sure.
Yeah, that there's something there to work on, and so
Sure.
yeah,
So the invitation to you is to create your own ritual around it.
That's good. Thanks.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like working with clay or pottery. Okay, there's this. So I really want to create a coffee cup, but now it's turning into a bowl, or is this,
Yeah, and the other thing is, I don't know if you want to share, because I remember when you came to Calgary that you did a ritual. I feel like it was like a partnership or a marriage ritual of some sort.
Oh, I did the wedding ceremony.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing about that again, because I can't really.
I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
very powerful. Actually, so I'll share that with everybody once we process this. I
Okay.
actually was invited to do it. My friend Dragos, who's Romanian, he got married summer of 2023, and he invited me to do that. No representatives, the entire family, his wife's family and his family, and like 100, 200 people. And I had a translator so it could go into Romanian. And of course, now you see all these people around, married couples holding on to each other. I need that. We need that. So it's it was really, really precious. But I'll explain to you what it is. But
Okay, yeah, because I
thank
love
you.
that, but at the moment, I mean, I can't really remember.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that.
Thank
Other
you.
questions? I see people look like they have questions on their face, but they're not raising their hand. Ellie?
Do you also have one for divorce?
Oh, divorce. Yeah.
I've done a lot of work with divorce.
Yeah, this goes back to I've learned some of this stuff from Shavasi, but it goes back to what Jim said. All right, I'll touch on that too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other experiences of this thing we just did? Okay.
I just got a big burst of energy coming back into the present. It was
Yeah.
up through my feet. Was,
Okay, so maybe it's a jig in there too somewhere.
yeah.
Well, the thing about dancing, dancing's a celebration. It's also a release, right? A lot of cultures dance to release or dance to celebrate or dance to. So there's something's being acknowledged. And I trust the bodies. Your body wants to do something different, which I think is great. Okay, the wedding ceremony. So basically, what this actually came from Judith Hemming, who's one of my teachers, English woman. So you um, you have, if you can do it live, it's great. But basically, you set up. There's you, and there's your partner, and then you have everybody behind them, their family and stuff. Um, and it's roughly, um, you thank everyone that's connected to your partner. So the words are, this is not in any order. You acknowledge their parents, their grandparents, teachers, and can be tricky, past lovers, everybody who taught you about life and love and brought you safely here to me. Boom. So everybody is acknowledged, and that opens up a space, and your partner does the same to you. I acknowledge your parents and your siblings and your grandparents and your ancestors, your past loves, everybody who taught you about life and love and brought you safely here to me. And what that does on some level, it clears a lot of stuff. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people get all jealous about, oh, that was your boyfriend in college. Yeah, but that was 20 years ago. I mean, we all had boyfriends and girlfriends, but in that process, we learned something about who I was as a person, how to be in an intimate environment, and so now I can bring that to you. So that's basically the ceremony, um, and then you can have me fully. You can have me fully, and then you say you can have me fully. That's really important. Not partially, fully. Susan's laughing. Hey, you get 20% of me. No, you can have me fully, and then I take you fully. That's really powerful because when you're marriage in many cultures, it's just sometimes it goes on for 3 or 4 days, depending on what your culture is. But it's a powerful connecting ritual. I mean, it has multi layers. And basically, take me fully is but I just don't come by me. They all come with me, not necessarily, hopefully, until on the honeymoon, but they come. This is where I come from. So when I take you fully, I'm taking everything that brought you here. That's what I'm taking to. And even the stuff that's not pretty. I mean, those are not in the word, but that even the stuff's not pretty because it somehow all this river got you to me. That's what's important, and vice versa. Okay, that's the wedding. Now the divorce Ellie brought up. So the divorce is if you can stand. Usually in a constellation, you're going through divorce. You'll a representative for your spouse or your partner. Divorces are contentious. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that, oh, yeah, well, we're remarried on, this is my new wife. How long you been married? 10 years. And I said, and he's still angry at the old wife and he's recruited the new wife to hate the old wife. I said, well, you're really not divorced. Yes, I am. Well, no, you're still emotionally married to your ex. So, and now you have a new partner who hates her too. 10 years ago, she didn't know who she was. So, the divorce thing is if I'm working with Linda, she's my ex, or she's a representative for my ex, you can say, thank you for loving me when we were young, and thank you for the children. I'll take the best that you gave me. I'll own my portion of the reason the marriage didn't work, and I leave the rest with you. That's it. The idea is to free you from that, and it may take moments. Thank you for loving me. I'll take thank you for what you could give me. Thank you for the children, and this is really important. If there's children, I will honor the part of you that lives in our children. That's really important, and I'll get into that in a moment. and I own my part of why our relationship didn't work, and I leave your part with you. That's it. And you could say this in absentia, obviously in the constellation. You say if Linda's representing my ex, or I'm representing her ex, or whatever, and you just say it. The idea is it frees you, so you're not caught up in that. It doesn't mean in the moment, you still have to deal with legal stuff or you know visitations and all that stuff, but you're not caught up in all that old stuff anymore. And I like Shavasi's words. Thank you for what you could give me. Thank you for what you did give me. That's it. Now with the children, what happens is, and many of us who have seen this, maybe we've fallen into this ourselves, is that if we disparage our ex in front of the children, we are destroying the part of our ex that lives in the children. And so the children begin to shrink. This is what someone would call poisoning the well. Not easy to do, not easy to come out of it. Your mother, God, she's always, I can't stand your mother. Well, they're hearing this, and hearing this, and that. So we have to find a way to honor them. You don't have to talk to your ex. You can be upset with her, but the idea is you don't poison the well. And if you can get to the place where you can honor her and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because at one time you loved each other. This is how these kids came here. This is how you had these. You loved each other. Maybe you were young and free, and you didn't know anything, but you did love each other. Okay, great question.
Bill, we had talked about this going to the top of the hour here, and we're
You
just
okay?
about there. I don't know if there's any last things or.
I'll take some more questions, and the people. I don't know if my name's in there, but BillMannle.com. If people have questions directly, they can reach out to me about stuff. So it's good to see some new faces. And I know many of you are working here, there, and everywhere. LJ, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah. Any other questions before we end? There's a few more. Will I teach something online? Deanna, you have a question? Oh, okay. What would you like me to teach online? I've done online work. I don't have anything coming up now, but what would you like? Who asked that question?
I asked that question. This is Kathleen. I live out near Seattle, so it's not easy for me to get to the
Yeah.
East Coast where you are. And I would like, I would be open to, I really like your style. I like to get to things quickly. And so I'd be open to whatever you taught.
Okay.
I'm a facilitator now. I took Francesca's year-long training, and
Good.
but we're always learning and always growing. So
Yeah. And that's really important. It's hard sometimes, as many of you know, it's hard for me to go sit in circles. I was in a circle the other day, and a friend of mine, and people were asking me questions. I said, no, I just want to be one of the people. Don't have, go talk to Susan. She's leading it. Just leave me alone. I'll be your father or your grandfather. But and it's hard. It's hard because, I don't have the opportunity. Maybe some of you too. It's just you don't have any opportunity. You're doing the work, doing the work, doing the work. So my invitation is, if you can go sit in other circles and learn from other people, do it. Because, God knows I was very grateful for Mike, Ed Lynch, and Linda may remember this. We bring people over from Germany and all these great facilitators. So we had the opportunity to sort of sit there. If I do something, I have some things percolating. I'll let you know.
yeah, maybe even a series. I really think series are much better than one-off. And even I don't know if you would ever be open to doing that, but just even running a group with 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 people.
Oh
and
yeah,
then
that online.
constellation. Yeah.
Yeah, I would do. I'm thinking of a series. I've done one 2, 3, 4 years ago about working with trauma in early childhood when it shows up. I thought of a series about what we're just talking about exercises and rituals and constellations and when to use those, and everybody would make sure everybody practiced those. Yeah, so we'll see. Yeah, I like series too. Maybe like, I don't know, like a Monday. And well, David White, one of my favorite poets, does this thing 3 Sundays in March or 3 Sundays, and he always has a theme. So I would do something like that. Five Mondays in April
That'd be
or
great.
something.
Thank you. This was
And
really-
and 2 hours each, so that's 10 hours or something like that, 3 hours each. But thank you for that. You made me think. Yeah.
We do have a question in the chat. Do you have any suggestions on working with fear through rituals?
Well, fear is a big thing. Fear, yeah. Most people talk about fear, but I would want to know what's under the fear, because fear is usually a story, and fear could be connected to loyalty. Like, I asked this woman once, really, she's from Romania, she lives in Spain, um, has a very successful therapy practice, a beautiful young woman, no, and can't get a partner, can't get a partner. And I asked her, so my question was, there's a loyalty there. Uh, are you allowed to have a bigger love or a more deeper love than your mother? She started crying. She says, no, I'm afraid if I do, I will lose my mother. This is a significant loyalty to the family system. She was so afraid. And yet I'm thinking, so there's one type of fear. Fear usually gets created because of something that's happened to us, or it's downloaded from our family system. We're told, don't do this, don't do that. These people are bad. Don't do that. And I think the beauty of this work is it allows us to step out of that, to see, well, wait. And it's okay to say, and sometimes fear can hold us back in a good way, or fear can teach us something about ourselves. It's usually never the fear, it's what's underneath it. I hope I answered that question. Anything else?
One
Okay.
last question we'll take in the chat before we wrap up is, when would you use the I am here ritual? For what situation?
I'm here. I was there, and I'm here now. I'm here. I was there. I was
I
here,
guess
there, and now
so.
I'm here. The one we
Noreen,
just did. The one we just, Noreen.
we just did.
I use it. If the theme is, sometimes the theme will be about, there could be a theme about trauma. If I'm doing a 3-day workshop, usually I divide, even though it's a theme, usually I divide up doing individual constellations with some group exercises. I want to make sure everybody comes, they get something, right? So if you have 40 people in a circle, it's going to be impossible to do 40 constellations. And depending on how each of us work, some of the constellations can go on for 2 hours. So I like to invite people to small group exercises, small constellations, 2 or 3, where it's that. And I said, okay, and sometimes it'll emerge, Noreen, it'll just emerge. I said, all right, so and those of us who do the work, that, oh my God, I didn't think that I was going to start this weekend. I thought I had this idea on love, but all the father wound is showing up. So I just kind of go with the flow. Or something else shows up, and I say, okay, after the break, I'm going to do a piece of work, or it's just about, I was here and now I'm here. And maybe that's to open up the circle in a way after you already said it. Okay, I want everybody to experience this. And usually what happens for me is any of these small group exercises that I do one-on-one, or 2 people together, something emerges, and then I'll do a piece of work. So it's an invitation to, just to, there, I don't think there's any like set, structure. You just trust it. Just trust it. Okay. Anyone else? All right. I think we're good. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much,
We're
Bill.
looking at some.
Thank you.
This is great. Great to
Yeah,
see
it was
everybody.
wonderful. Thanks a lot.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to
Good to
everyone
see you
that
all.
showed
It's
up.
good to see you all. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.